Good afternoon from the floor of the CME. This is Chris Robinson with your Traders Exclusive comment. Today, Thursday, April 12th, halfway through April. And what an April it's been. A lot of volatility. And that's the number one thing I want to talk about today is the dangers of getting emotional and letting your emotions rule your trading. People that don't last long in this business are people that need to be right every time. I would say the best analogy I'd say to people that are successful long-term, doesn't matter if you're hedging or you're speculating, you have to be like an NFL quarterback. You've got to have a short memory because you've got to be moving on to the next trade. Especially when markets are whipsawing, and we've seen a lot of whipsaw, not only in the stock market. We've been whipping around at a 1,000-point trading range in the stock market. A lot of people have lost a lot of money because they panic at the bottom and then they try and get back in at the top. That's a recipe for disaster if you let your emotions run your trading decisions. Good trading should really be be unexciting. And I think that's the number one thing I wanted to start out and talk about there. Secondly, let's talk about the action that we've had in the grains and the livestock. We'll start with the grains. I think a lot of people learn the difference between the word embargo and tariff. When the Chinese came out last week finally with their talk about another tariff for our soybeans, I think people just kind of lost their minds temporarily. We already had a 13% tariff, so they talked about raising it to 25 cents. We broke 60 cents in 3 days, and then in the last 7 days, last 6 to 7 days, we've come back all the way. So again, what happened there? People that were not protected panicked because it was a very short sell-off. They sold it at the bottom, and now they've been sitting there as the markets come back. So again, there's a situation where if you weren't hedged properly, or if you didn't have an idea of where you were going to go if the market moved like that, you set yourself up for losses. So again, I'll come back to that. Do not let your trade emotions dominate your trading decisions. Same thing, let's take a look at what's happened in live cattle and also in the hog market. I talked all last year about the fact that managed money kept buying every dip, even though we have a huge supply. They've turned their head away from supply and demand, kept buying it, buying it, buying it. Then we saw what happens when you have market liquidation. They sold about 80,000 contracts, 70,000 contracts of their long 100,000 contract position. They took us down 22 bucks in about a month and a half. A lot of people, again, when we had that capitulation last week with the market making new lows, along with what was going on with the China news, again, a lot of people threw the towel in down at the bottom there. And again, what have we done since then? We've rebounded. And then you saw the same type of action in lean hogs, especially lean hogs. And I'm going to finish with lean hogs. Our biggest export market really is Canada and Mexico. China is a big player, but not nearly as much goes to China as goes to Canada and Mexico. And if you've been reading the headlines, we may be close to getting some sort of deal finally with NAFTA. And NAFTA, that would really affect lean hog demand. But let's go back and take a look at that chart. In January, lean hogs were at contract highs, and then you saw a severe correction where basically the contract lost 1/3 of its value in about a month and a half. And that same day that we had the capitulation in cattle, and also with soybeans, that was just a day where people just threw their hands up and said, I'm out. In the 5 days, 6 days since then, that market has retraced almost half of what it lost. So at the end of the day, that's come back to the thing I started at the beginning of this, is that if you let your emotions control your trading, you're setting yourself up for a world of pain. When these markets get volatile like this, there are a lot of opportunities, but you've got to stay disciplined, and you also have to be willing to admit when you're wrong and get into the next trade. If you're looking for help with your trading or you're speculating, you can find me online, Chris Robinson. Have a great afternoon.